The best of the morning to you. This is Monday with Friday, preparing you for a better week ahead. While 1,000 other current matters clamor for attention this week, I return to my reflections on what racial justice looks like. This is my third installment of a paper I presented recently at an international conference dedicated to the issue of racial justice. Racial injustice is married to economic injustice. As much as some folks might think that the corrupt, self-serving, racist, and faulty versions of what some people may call Christianity that they might witness are due to the texts to which Christians turn for their guidance, the truth is that both racial injustice and economic injustice are deeply ensconced within Old Testament prophets' concerns. It's just that some people called Christians and others prefer to ignore it. Moses, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Amos, Micah, and Zechariah all denounce economic oppression, some of which are specifically upon aliens and strangers, minorities, both in the ethnic and numeric sense. The slavery these prophets decried in their time was more akin to indentured labor than the incomparable horror of chattel slavery and the transatlantic slave trade that created systemic poverty, systemic racism, the whole United States, impoverished Indian reservations within the United States, and European wealth all at once. The moneyed class always uses their financial power to influence political decisions that favor the rich and keep the poor impoverished. That's in the biblical record as much as it is in world history. Greed and the manipulation of resources create economic imbalance, producing the 1% who have and the 99% who don't. That 1% analyses tell us are mostly and primarily of white American and European stock, not usually African, West Indian, Caribbean, South American, Hispanic, Indian, Asian, or other ethnic groupings, though one or two of these groupings may have exceedingly rich people. Racial justice requires economic justice. Economic injustice is quite often racial injustice. So, racial justice must then reduce the widening gap of imbalance between those who have not and those who have become the inordinately rich in our times due to being descendants of enslavers or beneficiaries of the vile institution of slavery and indentured servitude. In some cases, these are individuals. In some others, they are families. Others are entire nations whose national wealth grew directly from the enslavement of black and colored people and the plundering, pillaging, and exploitation of their lands of origin or the lands to which they were imported or imported from, transferring their resources and wealth outward and northward and leaving in its wake the poverty-stricken global south, which these rich nations then turned around and disparagingly called the third world, relegating us to third places. Donald Trump has boasted repeatedly about denying payment to people contracted to work for him, and yet this man is staunchly supported by persons who say they believe the Bible, the same Bible in which a writer named James lambasts the rich who fail to pay the poor who labored for them, leaving systemic poverty in their wake. That's in the Bible. In America, the minimum wage is set by Congress, comprised mostly of powerful, rich white men and women from both sides of the political divide who consistently deny others, including many colored immigrants, for economic and market reasons, they say, a decent living wage, thus keeping them poor. One study reveals that American whites are 20 times richer than blacks and Hispanics. Effective racial justice shall seek to correct economic imbalance created chiefly by European supremacist, racist, and imperialist philosophies with which even the so-called Christianity of those imperialists was reshaped to support greed, to support conquest and control, virulent systemic structures still alive worldwide. Racial justice shall conscientiously follow the money and de-weaponize economics against racial minorities. The poor are nearly always an ethnic minority who are quoted higher interest rates, who experience lower property valuations, offered unfair and even squalid housing opportunities or no housing opportunities at all. They become squatters, homeless, prevented from living in their neighborhood of choice. Their children are then denied attendance at adequately resourced schools, thereby relegating them to a poorer quality of education. All of these are ingredients for a bitter pie of economic disadvantage within which injustice becomes entrenched. Now, this may be a picture of a black minority neighborhood in a developed country such as the United States, deliberately destroyed by white supremacy. Think about Tulsa, Oklahoma. But it is also the sordid picture of entire black and brown nations in the global south, plundered by white Europeans, Americans, and the British. Think Haiti, for example. Institutions such as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund must purge their policies of any oppressive measures upon nations that are already struggling with poverty. Debt forgiveness should not be viewed as kindness, but rather as an instrument of international development, equity, and racial justice. As I conclude this segment, I declare something I did not in my original presentation, and it is this, that racial justice, as well as economic, social, criminal, and many other forms of justice, shall require religious deconstruction. For it is very clear to me that religion per se, and worse, religion misinterpreted, manipulated, and corrupted, continues to do great harm to especially ethnic and sexual minorities everywhere in the world. It is why my interpretation of my faith often annoys those who consider themselves the majority. I am 𝗪𝗁𝐺, and your week just got better. I'll see you again next week. Happy Monday, all the way to Friday.